Hey, folks, welcome to another episode of Cutter One. I am your host, Jay, just Jay, your resident troublemaker and your resident culture warrior. I hope you are all doing awesome. All right, so um, I don't know how many of you folks are Elder Scrolls fans. I would think Elder Scrolls would probably be, if you're into to video games or or console games, I guess. Same thing. Um, you probably, and you're a Tolkien fan, I would think it would almost go without saying that you would be an Elder Scrolls fan. And the reason why I say that is because for me, one of the appeals of Elder Scrolls is the depth of the lore and the world building that they've put into it, right? And now, granted, they've had years as well. I believe the first one came out in the mid 90s. So, they've been a franchise that's been going for quite some time. But they've literally had dedicated folks that have worked strictly on the lore, strictly on, uh, you know, making sure that that the lore was good. Like they've come up with histories and there's different eras and ages, just like in Tolkien's, like how you have the first age, second age. Well, in Elder Scrolls you have multiple ages as well, I believe. And those of you who are familiar with the Elder Scrolls through Skyrim only will, I believe Skyrim is third age within the Elder Scrolls world, Tamriel. Okay, so Elder Scrolls has Tamriel is roughly the equivalent of Middle Earth. Okay, and I believe in Elder Scrolls, Skyrim takes place in the third era or the third age. But they have multiples as well. And if for those of you who may be familiar with Elder Scrolls Online, Elder Scrolls Online is in the second age. So roughly think in terms of if you had an online game set in Tamriel's version of the Silmarillion, right? It's sort of like that. But anyway, yeah, so I'm a huge fan, as you can see, the flags here, here. Right, those are the three alliances that are going on in Elder Scrolls Online. You have over here. I'll start here. You have the Ebonheart Pact, which are these guys with the red flag. You have the Aldmeri Dominion, which are these folks here. They are the elves. Okay, and then you have the oh Jesus Christ, um, Daggerfall Covenant, which is these guys here with the blue flag. But anyway, so I'm a huge fan of that, and so it was just announced yesterday. Well, okay, I'm recording this Thursday night, so Wednesday for you guys who are seeing this on Friday. Wednesday, Elder Scrolls Online announced a new lineup of things they've got coming for 2023, and I thought we would check out the Shadow of Morrowind cinematic announcement trailer that they put out. It's kind of cool. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the game. But let's get right into it. Let me try and bring it up here. See what they got. All right, let's see what we got. And there we go. All right, guys, let's check it out. Nice, 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 nice. All right. Well, again, I stopped it where I did because I didn't want it to turn into sort of an advertisement. I don't want anyone to accuse me of shilling for anything. Um, I think it's kind of cool. They're going for that sort of just a sprinkle of Lovecraftian horror there, which I thought was rather cool. With this take on it, some of their other stuff has been more classically fantasy oriented stuff. You know, in their world, there are elves and you have like lizard folk known as Argonians and cat folk known as Khajiit. And then you have like sort of Nords, which are sort of based on like Nordic, uh, you know, peoples, as well as Red Guards and Bretons and all sorts of, a diverse world, to say the least. So yeah, so I just thought it was cool that on Wednesday they had this big announcement of sort of like what's coming out for this upcoming year, and apparently the coming out in March is the first of the DLC that sort of tells this story. That was sort of like the cinematic announcement that we just watched, and it's going to be an ongoing story throughout the year, which focuses on that. What you saw in the video there was one of the deities known as Hermaeus Mora, who is sort of like the a deity of knowledge, I guess you would say, and information. And so it's interesting that it seems like there's somebody trying to, I don't know, get said knowledge or get some aspect of said knowledge, get like, I don't know, hidden arcane secrets or something like that. And clearly that character that you saw in there was plays some pivotal role in how things play out. But the first of the DLCs based on this story is Shadow over Morrowind, which, from what I understand, will come out in March, towards the end of March, and so it's sort of being known as Elder Scrolls Necrom, which is this city in this location, Morrowind. It's kind of hard to explain, but there's a whole. It's like trying to explain Lothlorien to somebody who's never read or Tolkien or seen any of the adaptations. It's a little bit hard to explain, but it's not. Basically, Necrom is the city in Morrowind. Morrowind is sort of on the eastern side of the continent. Actually, it's the furthest northeastern portion of the continent. And its population is largely dark elves. That character that you saw, the female character, she is what is a dark elf in Tamriel. So it's interesting. I think it's cool that they're sort of putting a little horror twist on it, that little Lovecraftian, Cthulhu-esque vibe they had going on there. It ought to be interesting. Ought to be interesting to play and check out. Me, I'm a big wuss horror stuff, like horror games, like jump scare games. I can't do it. I tried doing that one time at like 2 a.m. by myself in my living room with the lights out, and yeah, I got about 15 minutes into. I think it was when they came out with the new Doom, when they had redone the graphics, and there was that one thing where one of the zombified doctors is coming up the stairs. Yeah, and it scared the piss out of me. So yeah, I don't do stuff like that. But this ought to be interesting. It ought to be interesting to check out. And I thought I would mention it since it is news and it is related to Elder Scrolls. And yes, Elder Scrolls is one of the things that I will cover on this channel. Because to me, Elder Scrolls, Dungeons and Dragons, Dragonlance, Tolkien, are all part of that high fantasy genre. And when I say high fantasy, I mean that, you know, I don't want to sound like disparaging, but to me, the difference between high fantasy and low fantasy sort of is best encapsulated by saying, like, you would have something like Tolkien obviously would be high fantasy, right? It's very intellectual. It's not that you have to be like college educated to understand it, but it's very intellectual. Its themes are mature themes, right? It's not just simple good guys, bad guys, you know. up, down, left, right. It's got mature themes and subtext and subplots and so on and so forth. Whereas sort of what I would consider like low fantasy is that sort of just like I don't. See, initially, I want to say like Harry Potter, but I think that would be wrong. I think I would be selling Harry Potter short if I classified him as low fantasy. Um, just something that's not as fleshed out, not as fleshed out, not as thoroughly. It doesn't have that level of depth, right? That level of depth or covers those sort of big intellectual philosophical questions, right? Like Lord of the Rings, like, what is the nature of evil, right? Like low fantasy doesn't cover that, right? So having said that, um, I like the Elder Scrolls universe because it is also high fantasy as well as Dragonlance and Dungeons and Dragons and Tolkien. So anyway, I thought I would share that with you guys. I know during the live stream, some of us were talking and saying how want to see a little bit more diversity. Like, yes, obviously Tolkien is always going to be our main thing, and my main thing. But break it up a little bit because there are other fantasy worlds out there, and some of them are equally as they have an equal level of depth to them. And I think in all my sci-fi fantasy journeys, if you will, and by reading and watching and absorbing as much sci-fi fantasy as I can. I would say in terms of fantasy worlds and universes, obviously Tolkien is the benchmark by which you measure everything. At least I do. But I would say that Elder Scrolls comes real close in its level of lore and how you can literally deep dive into this stuff and go on for a while. Like the guys who came up with the lore and the history and all this stuff, it's just as detailed as anything that Tolkien wrote about Middle Earth. I mean, these guys really put a lot of effort into it, and it shows. Like if you start getting some of the books, well, they're usually covered by my chair. Okay, but I always mess this up. There we go. Okay, this book right here that you're seeing right there, that's that book right there. That's a 3 volume set of lore books from Elder Scrolls that I have with my Tolkien books. Just to give you an example, and that's not everything either. That's just three that a box set that I happen to have there, which I thought looked nice, so I just kept it out. But yeah. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. Are you into Elder Scrolls and Tamriel and that world and that universe? And if so, are you looking forward to if so, do you play Elder Scrolls Online? And if you do, are you looking forward to the new Shadows over Morrowind and the Necrom storyline that's going to be happening throughout the year? If not, check it out. I mean, look into it. I think if for Tolkien fans, it might be something that you might be interested in. Like I said, it has a lot of depth, a lot of lore, very rich in its world building. So I would definitely recommend checking it out. And yeah, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Remember, if you like the video, like the video. If you feel like sharing the video, by all means, feel free to do so. It helps get us out there. It helps get more exposure, get more people checking us out. If you have not subscribed, I would hope and that you would consider subscribing. And maybe if you want to get more into Elder Scrolls, we could have some videos. I'm going to try and expand it based on the conversations that some of us were having during the live stream about sort of covering additional things. I like that idea, but I like sort of keeping it within that bubble of high fantasy. So yes, there will be more Elder Scrolls, Dungeons and Dragons, Dragonlance, Tolkien stuff as well. I'm not gonna Don't anybody worry. I'm not like abandoning the Tolkien stuff. That's always going to be my primary thing. But yeah, I would hope that you would subscribe, or at least consider subscribing and joining in on the fun and becoming part of the army of beautiful badasses. All right. And if you are a subscriber, thank you for taking the time out to watch this video. I truly appreciate everybody who does, and everybody who comments, and everybody who interacts. And that's going to do it for this one. So I look forward to seeing the discussion in the comment section below, guys. All right. Until then, be good, be safe, be awesome. Peace.